What is the difference between criticism and genuine feedback? That's what I would like to talk to you today because that's what I've been pondering on. So maybe you've had a similar experience like mine that got me on this track of thinking, where you've been given feedback and maybe agreed with that feedback and then genuinely tried to make changes to be able to incorporate and grow from that feedback, and then ending up having to toss the whole thing out. Like it just maybe even caused harm, maybe even made things more difficult, but most definitely did not give you to the original destination. Those kind of situations, I have especially one major one that's happened to me in the last year that's been kind of bugging me, which is why I've been thinking about this or whatever, because I do not like throwing out other people's critiques. I really have a hard time getting an outside perspective of me, so I appreciate it when people actually do give me feedback and I take it really seriously and I really want to incorporate it and I'd be able to grow from it. So when I get it and then I know it's true, but I can't do anything with it, it drives me crazy. And one of the reasons of that is if I'm getting that feedback, it's not actually feedback, it's just pure criticism. It's really hard for me to label those kind of things as just pure criticism because it feels like an excuse, especially when I know it's true. So I've been thinking about that on how to resolve and deal with certain ones of the situation, because after a year of trying to reframe it and give this specific person a benefit of the doubt and things like that, I still keep coming to the same conclusion that I didn't get anything of value out of it. And so I would like to be able to, tag it and move on. So here's some thoughts that I've had on to actually be able to separate criticism and feedback and what to do with that when you're receiving critiques and also giving them. So first thing to realize is that one major point that is part of being critical and feedback that are true for both of them. And that is they're usually speaking to something that is true. So there is definitely a truth in what the critique is. Like maybe you are unkind, maybe you are not doing that right. There is a truth there. And that is what makes it really hard to deal with actual criticism, especially when you're trying to grow, because you're like, it's true, I do want to fix that. And you're trying to work with what they're giving you and it's not creating good results. So there's always that can be taken away from feedback or criticism, that you can at least take that little outside shot and be like, well, there's a truth to that, even though I have no idea what to do about that or how to fix it. So we should always have that openness or whatever to looking for the underlining truth underneath the criticism when it isn't actual genuine feedback. So with that said, the truth of the matter does not determine that something is genuine feedback. There's a lot of truth in things that are being said, and it's criticism, and pretty much everything that's being said from the person giving the criticism just needs to be tossed because there's no utility in it. And because there's two different points that need to be actually hit for a critique to meet the guidelines of feedback. And the first one being is you need to be able to, the critique needs to have exact coordinates on a map of what the destination is supposed to be. Now, a person could be like, okay, everyone, we're meeting at my house. I live on Jones Lane. And that might be true. We might be need to meet at their house, and it might be on Jones Lane. But beyond that, that's pretty useless information. You cannot take that information and plug it into a model like, say, Google Map, and be able to get directions to get the house from that description. It is not nuanced enough or defined enough to actually be able to get a person to have any ideal understanding of what the direction is. So for a critique to be actually genuine feedback, it needs to have a lot more nuanced coordinates to be able to define what the goal is. And you do this by having the person who is getting the critique needs to be able to ask questions coming from their understanding until they understand what the goal is. And so if the person giving the critique isn't able to do that, they do not have either the knowledge And then here's the more important one. They might have knowledge, but they might not actually have any genuine personal experience in it. And they're just talking about things that they think are good, but they haven't actually practiced and applied. So they can't actually define it. They're kind of defining that pie in the sky thing rather than an actual direction. And it just sounds good. So got to be aware of that when you're giving criticism and when you're receiving. Is there enough actual data to define what the criticism is trying to move you towards to actually be valid? So that's the first part. And then the second part is even more important, which is, can the person giving the critique be able to listen and understand where the person is starting from? So like when you plug in Google Maps, you have your destination, and more importantly, you have to plug in your location. And then the more accurate and nuanced the location, the more accurate, results and quicker way you're going to be able to get to that. If you put the state of Idaho versus Boise, Idaho, you're going to get different directions in Google Maps. So that is true. So if a person who is giving the critique needs to be able to answer questions to help the person receiving it figure out where they are in relationship to the goal. And a person who's just being critical usually is not willing to do that. They're just like, no, you just need to get there. No, this is just the right thing. Just get there. I don't care where you are. Just stop doing what you're doing. Get there. They kind of have that mindset. And they have a whole lot of suggestions, usually for that person, on how to get there. And they're about as useful as if you're saying, let's get to Dallas, Texas. And then you're like, there's this freeway that connects to Dallas, Texas. Just keep driving. Just pick a direction. Just keep driving until you hit that freeway. And then that, if you take the south lane, it'll take you to Dallas, Texas. Which might be true if you're coming from the right direction. But if you're coming from a different direction and you hit that freeway and you go south, you can end up in the entirely different direction than where you're trying to get to. So a person who's being critical, they're suggesting they're getting, can actually cause roadblocks and harm if another person acts upon it, because it is not tailored from the direction that they're coming from. And that's why sometimes when you get feedback, even though, that feedback that's actually criticism and you actually try to apply it, it can actually make things worse. And that's why sometimes you have to just throw it away and it doesn't have any value because it's not tailored to the direction you're at. And depending, you might have to relearn those lessons before, but it's usually better to get that from another source that actually is willing to hear and be able to tune their directions to where you actually are. So you have a defined North Star, you have a starting point, and then you're able to make a plan on how to start getting there with an understanding that change doesn't happen overnight. This is going to have to be a progressive process. And, if we're wanting true change, that's actually going to make a difference long term. So those things make a very big difference between if something's just being critical and genuine feedback. So applying this, so as a person, if you're wanting to give feedback, you need to make sure the feedback you're giving, you have personal experience enough to be able to answer questions or to be able to critically think about and give yes and be able to people like, I haven't actually done that, but from my experience, this might be something to consider, kind of guidelines when giving feedback, especially suggestions. Be very careful to be observing where a person's at so that you are not accidentally sending them in the opposite direction of where they need to go. And then when you're receiving feedback, it's a little litmus test. Is this actually defined enough to be of any value in a destination? Is the source of it willing to go back and forwards in conversation to help me not only understand what the criticism is, but the critique is, but also where am I starting from so I can, actually make a plan on how I personally am going to get there rather than it just being this thing held over you that, look, you don't got this and I said it and we both know you don't have this thing anymore. None of that, right? So as soon as it's like that, toss it out, keep the truth of, what the truth is, and then realize that you need to figure out your own way of how, don't take the suggestion of the critical person, the critical person, but being able to figure out other sources and other ways to figure out where the actual destination is so that you can get actual good directions to that goal. So there you have it. That's my ponderings and thoughts on that I am finding useful, and it's at least helping me put, like I said, the one situation that's been bothering me to bed on why I wasn't actually able to use the feedback and why I had to even backtrack out of it and stuff. And so that you can have, so I hope this is helpful on your personal growth journey when you're trying to get feedback to be able to grow more and not get discouraged when you might be hitting something like this. So thank you for listening. Please check out the rest of the channel, and I'll see you in another video.